Today's tale takes us to the 1980s in Brazil, where a chilling discovery sent shockwaves through the country. The Brazilian government, however, sought to keep this eerie event hidden from the public eye due to its unsettling nature. Nevertheless, as the saying goes, secrets have a way of coming to light, and eventually, photos of this shocking discovery found their way into the public domain, causing Brazil to shudder with fear. But before we delve into this hair-raising story, consider subscribing, because I make videos like these regularly, so if that's your cup of tea, please subscribe for more. Picture this: it's the afternoon of September the 29th, 1988, and a curious 10-year-old boy named Francisco is exploring the edges of a man-made lake nestled in the heart of southern Brazil. Armed with nothing but a stick and a heart full of adventure, Francisco was on a mission to uncover bugs and insects. This particular lake, a segment of the vast Billings Reservoir, located in the Brazilian state of São Paulo, held a special place in his heart. Francisco, with his reckless and adventurous spirit, knew he wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the reservoir, and stories had circulated about gangs bringing their unfortunate victims here to be buried, making it quite an unsafe place to explore. But Francisco didn't care and carried on regardless. Nonetheless, he had reason to be cautious. There was a strange air about the reservoir, making it a place to be feared, but Francisco, just like kids his age, didn't care and carried on anyway. He thought, no harm has come to me so far, what could possibly go wrong? And so, as Francisco sauntered along, prodding the muddy terrain with his stick, he noticed something that caught his attention. It was a water scorpion, almost 2 inches long. Without breaking his gaze, he swiftly dropped his backpack and reached for a clear container he had tucked away in his side pocket. Francisco bent down, carefully scooped up the water scorpion and put the lid on the container. But, as he admired his newly acquired insect, he noticed something strange on the other side of the reservoir. Setting his bug aside, he ventured closer to investigate. To his surprise, a large group of vultures was huddled in a circle by the water's edge. He assumed that vultures meant there was a dead animal nearby. But, to his dismay, the distance across the water was too great, and he had no means to reach the other side without getting completely soaked. Francisco then picked up a rock and hurled it in the direction of the vultures, attempting to create enough of a disturbance to send them flying. The first rock, however, had little effect. The vultures merely glanced at the rock, undeterred. Francisco collected around 25 rocks and started hurling them one after another towards the scavengers. Finally, the vultures took to the air, giving Francisco a clear view of what had captured their attention. Francisco's excitement gave way to sheer terror as he gazed across the water. The object the vultures had been observing was not what he anticipated. It wasn't a bird or a typical animal. It lacked feathers or fur, appearing almost pallid like a pig. His mind raced, questioning why a pig would be in such an obscure location. However, as he continued to scrutinize the distant figure, the truth dawned on him. He was not looking at a pig, he was looking at a human body. Panicked and trembling, Francisco hastily gathered his belongings, turned on his heels, and sprinted towards the nearest village. Once there, he screamed for help, his cries of distress reverberating through the air. Within hours, the area surrounding the body where the vultures had gathered was overrun with police and inquisitive villagers. Normally, when a body was discovered in the vicinity of the reservoir, a common occurrence was due to gang violence. The authorities would often interact with onlookers, informing them about the victim and the ongoing investigation. This time, however, things unfolded quite differently. The police adopted an uncharacteristic air of secrecy. They encircled the area with crime scene tape and formed a wall, shoulder to shoulder, obstructing the view of the villagers and shunning any inquiries about the case. Locals, perplexed by the authorities' evasiveness, lingered for a while, but eventually dispersed as the sun descended below the horizon. Assuming they could watch TV and get details on the incident, they left the area. However, when they watched their TVs, listened to the radios, and read their newspapers, a confounding revelation awaited them. Not a single news story about the discovery of the body was in sight. Given the gravity of the situation, this inexplicable lack of coverage puzzled the public. The following morning, as villagers retraced their steps to the reservoir to seek answers from the police, they were met with a bewildering sight. The police had completely vanished, and the body was nowhere to be found. It was as if the scene had been completely purged of any trace of the gruesome event. This turn of events raised even more questions, leaving locals baffled. For days and days, the community eagerly scanned the news, waiting for an official statement. Yet, once again, silence prevailed. The absence of a report further deepened the mystery, but as time passed, the incident faded into obscurity, forgotten by all but the most skeptical villagers who couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was at play. Fast forward 6 years to 1994, and a covert whistleblower within the Brazilian government decided that the truth could no longer be concealed. This figure, who remains shrouded in anonymity, leaked a trove of shocking documents. Among these documents were photographs and an autopsy report that was never meant to be seen. Once these materials reached the media, a disturbing revelation began to take shape. To fully comprehend the significance of the leaked photos and autopsy report, one must first be aware of an uncanny aspect of Brazilian history. Brazil has a staggering number of UFO sightings, not the typical claims made by individuals, but by the military personnel, police, and government officials. In Brazil, UFO sightings are so common that the government has dedicated a program for monitoring these phenomena. One of the most well-known of these sightings, the Night of the UFOs, took place on May 19, 1986. This extraordinary event unfolded across 4 different Brazilian states simultaneously, with countless witnesses, including members of the military and government. The government responded by dispatching fighter jets to investigate, but these UFOs displayed astonishing agility. They could easily outmaneuver the fighter jets, even disappearing and reappearing in the blink of an eye, with speeds far beyond human capabilities. The event ended with the UFOs vanishing, and a subsequent government press conference left people both astonished and uneasy. The Brazilian government claimed they had no knowledge of the origin of these lights and couldn't fathom their nature. Consequently, the story of the Night of the UFOs, though unsettling, eventually faded into the background. It was business as usual, or so they thought, until 1994, when the leaked photographs and autopsy report surfaced. The public learned that the unfortunate man found in the reservoir back in 1988 was far from a victim of mere accidental drowning, drunkenness, or gang violence. Though Francisco initially reported that the man displayed no visible injuries, this was not the case. The police, upon close examination, discovered a series of unusual and severe physical injuries. The most perplexing were the 4 perfectly circular holes, each measuring between 1 and 1.5 inches in diameter. 2 of these holes were located above his chest, just above the armpit region, while another was positioned directly over his belly button. A 4th hole was present in his groin. These openings were not crudely done, but appeared surgically precise, as though a skilled hand had crafted them with high-end medical instruments. A subsequent autopsy revealed that these holes served as ports for the removal of the man's internal organs, which seemed to have been vacuumed out of his body. Most of his blood had been extracted through these holes as well. Yet, the horror did not end there. The autopsy discovered that the man's ear had been removed, one of his eyes was missing, and the lower portion of his face had been excised with an unsettling precision, which suggested that surgical tools were used during this gruesome procedure. As well as this, his vagus nerve, responsible for regulating functions such as heart rate and digestion, was in a state of turmoil at the time of his demise. This means that the man might have been alive during the procedure. This gruesome discovery in the reservoir sent shockwaves through Brazil. But what did it have to do with the Night of the UFOs, which had occurred 2 years earlier? The answer lay in the aftermath of the UFO sightings. After the Night of the UFOs in 1986, reports began to emerge of inexplicable cattle deaths in areas where sightings had taken place. Cattle were found with circular holes drilled into their bodies, their organs missing, and parts of their faces removed. A theory began to take root in Brazil that these UFOs were somehow linked to the mysterious cattle deaths. The disturbing twist occurred in 1988 when the man was discovered in the reservoir. This man, subject to eerie and precisely executed mutilation, exhibited injuries strikingly similar to those seen in the cattle found dead in UFO sighting areas. As the government grappled with this grisly revelation, they realized that the truth could not be concealed, and their efforts to keep it hidden were in vain. So what was the connection between this gruesome discovery and the UFO sightings? The evidence pointed to a chilling possibility. The same forces responsible for the cattle deaths were now targeting humans. The government's motivation for hiding the truth lay in the dread that Brazilians would come to believe that the UFOs were behind these terrible acts. As a result, the authorities took drastic measures to suppress the story, inadvertently fueling conspiracy theories that would linger in the shadows of Brazilian history. In the end, Brazil remains a hotbed of UFO sightings. While the world at large might dismiss these chilling incidents as mere conspiracy theories, a deep well of intrigue and mystery surrounds the country's experiences with the unknown. And that's where our story comes to an end. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Please remember to subscribe, and thanks again for watching.